Action Committee? No, Community Advisory Committee. To order. CAC. CAC, exactly. So thank you all for coming. A couple announcements. We're going to start with announcements before we get into the visionary things. And I've already put my agenda at the bottom of the list here. First of all, we've had 2 people that have had to resign from the committee. LaToya from Severn has some ill parents living in Michigan and is spending too much time out of the state and is unable to. And Sophia, our student representative, although she is a junior going back to high school, she also has commitment. It's a part-time job. She had an internship this summer working another, and so she has resigned. So we have 2 people who have resigned. Matt from Odenton has had a death in the family and has not been able to make several meetings and will miss this meeting as well as the next meeting. So I wanted to let you know about that. He is watching online, but he hasn't been able to personally attend. Which brings me to a new meeting policy. Because we are getting into the heart of things now, we will not be able to have substitutions for our committee members. Our committee members have been appointed by the county executive, and so if you are not able to attend, please let us know, and then please watch on TV the video and email any questions to Cindy before the next meeting. Okay, so we wanted to let you all know about that. The other thing is really important. We talked about this last time as far as attending, because right now we're getting into the meat of things and we need representation. We don't have representation tonight from Odenton, from Severn. We don't have representation per se from Millersville, that we don't have in general. So we have to make sure, which is why we have this mission up, that people remember while you are here. You are here not only to represent your area, which we are counting on you to do, but you also are to think of the big picture of what is best for the entire county. So I remind you to take a minute to look at that. That is this committee's mission statement that we took before. So, okay, we've had some additional comments about our vision statement last week. So we are reopening that discussion. We are not going to spend a lot of time rewriting it. We don't want to wordsmith it. We don't want to have additions and deletions. We just want to make sure that we are making the best choices that we can and not duplicating some work. And Kate has been very good about showing us some of the reasons. I think you all got one of her revisions and the comments, such as the county doesn't have a quality of life. It's the residents that have a quality of life as a result of things that are done that the county does or provides. So we need to look at that. And then Melanie had a suggestion of adding invaluable ecosystems. When you say invaluable ecosystems, I'm assuming that your ecosystems are covering everything, because we don't talk about watersheds, we don't talk about forests, we don't talk about stormwater. So that's your intention, is to cover everything environmentally. Okay. And so we want to look at that. You have that in front of you, or no, sorry, it's on the screen. It is not in front of you because they were last minute, so it is on the screen.
And I will say, Kristen had submitted some comments. I'm not sure when that was.
That was before. She's on vacation.
But not to the whole group, and then you ask if we want to bring it up.
Yeah, and so her tweaks were the second one on there. By honoring its rich Chesapeake heritage, as well as embracing the robust opportunities of a new day, Anne Arundel County shapes a future that enhances its quality of life and creates a place where its residents are proud to live, work, learn, and play. And I wouldn't see, She said, I think the phrase represents the best of both worlds is redundant, given the opening clause. It seems a bit tired and cliche, but I think it is better than the first one.
Kate, or, sorry.
And I was just trying to do a little bit of what she did, which was try to get rid of what felt like duplicative or language where we started falling all over ourselves. So just to tighten it up a little bit.
And then Melanie, you built on.
Right. And I really like that addition. And my apologies for not getting it out. I did it last week and got stuck on my own box.
Comments?
Just clarify, this is still effectively the copy of some other municipalities' vision statement.
Not any longer. We changed it too much.
Basically, the foundation was from before, yeah. And then we-
Just to be delayed on the line, that just turned me off. We can't produce a vision statement of our own that our county executive and the citizens of this county have expected of us. How in the world we produce for general economics?
Well, we have produced our own. We started with that.
I'm
and we
just making
changed
a
it
statement.
enough that it really is our own now.
I was very disappointed.
I think it helped get us here, though. You know, I mean, I think all of that conversation last week helped get us to a place where we started to be a little more consolidated and at least could all be somewhat on the same page.
And remember, we have our theme to back up this vision statement, and that will be where we build into. And then you saw we have our goals and objectives, and that's further down. You'll see that at the end of your package. Sorry.
One way to think about this that might help us is while we've done some language tweaking, what we really want is to make sure that what this says is what we're striving for. That what that describes is the vision we want for this county in 20 years. And that doesn't usually stand by itself. It stands along with the goals and the objectives so that you're painting a picture and you're using it as kind of a litmus test to check back and say, well, if we do this, does it get us to that? If we do this, does it support that? So that there's a link between the vision and the goals and what happens down the line in terms of the implementation plans and the regional plans. So that might help us think about this a little differently.
Well said.
I agree.
I think the vote 9-4.
Actually, it was
9 in favor, 4 against.
12 to.
I was one of the negatives, and I do agree with Gary. To me, this says something, and I've spent a lot of time reading vision statements and reading the documents that we have received, which always not a great one. And it was very specific to incorporate the comments made from many of the people who attended the listening sessions, the vision sessions. So to me, you all have voted for it, but to me, it says just about nothing. It says, reminds me I could write music from the sound of music, which is, that's what it seems to me, it's just so far.
Okay, we're going to continue. Charlie, what do you think?
I'm happy with the
Revamp? Okay.
what Melanie added to it.
Okay, Gary?
I could go on, but I mean, think words in here like best of both worlds. What the heck is that? I mean,
You changed it.
That's
The best of both the past and the future. Look at this on the screen.
Well, I mean, we write these feel-good vision statements. Been doing this for 30-some years. Do you think if you still do the same thing in 20 years, it's gonna be any different? No, it's not. It's you know, the good old saying, if you keep doing the same thing, you're just going around in circles. We need something that takes this document going forward and says, we're gonna think out of the box, we're gonna do things, a document that will be embraced by planning and zoning, the county council, the county executive, the hearing officer, and the board of appeals.
Okay, so I'm taking
Because-
that as a no.
Well, let me finish, because it is a no, because that is the net result, is that when you can produce the most wordsmith document, but any one of those people and an individual can reverse the whole course of history of this GDP document when it's done. That's what's been happening. That's why Jessup is the way, the disgusting way it has been developed. It doesn't appear there's been any planning done. And that's because individuals or small groups, hearing officers or the appeals board can just wipe this out. And we need to have something that will stand the test of time and require people to adopt. I mean, we wrote it, we're spending a lot of
Well,
time.
that's it. So we need to say if you are able to live with this tonight or not. It is a vision, it is the themes that are going through that, it is the vision for the GDP, not for everything else, and we will be breaking up and going into those goals and objectives.
I
and
think it
everything.
needs a lot more work. I think it needs, you know, some people to think outside the box and come up with this a whole lot more specific to our issues and have on camera, and not something that somebody copied off the web and then modeled on.
So live with it.
I think personally, I think it's a little generic, other than the Chesapeake Bay being in there. And I think we should use words like unification instead of like the best of both. And also as well, I think it's fairly short. It should maybe be 2 sentences. That's just how I feel about it. It's too generic.
I'm taking that as a no.
Is there anything to add?
I mean,
You wanted to add,
Wanting to tweak that one?
Right, like, I mean, I think it's just generic, other than Chesapeake Bay, it's really, it doesn't give you, when you look at a vision and just look at, I get the theme broken down, and I really respect that, and I like that being part of it, broken down, but when you read the vision, it's like, okay, you know, it doesn't really give you a vision. It doesn't,
you wanted to add the word united, what was the other word?
like a unification of the old and new, you know, 'cause we do have heritage, you know, it's not the best of both worlds necessarily, that's kind of like, I agree with that being kind of corny, but other than the Chesapeake Bay and saying like embracing robust opportunities, enhancing, you know, like, it just needs a little more cultural response into the vision statement.
Ellen?
Well, originally, I supported the much longer statement. You know, but nobody wanted the longer statement, right?
I did.
Except the judge, you know, I think he and I were at the same place at that time. But everybody wanted a short, one sentence. So we got that. We got the very short vision statement that has all of these affirmative words that are basically basic to both the vision statements. They're different. So the vision themes are really the guts of where you spell out what this broad-based statement means. And so I support what we did, ultimately, what we did last week. Although originally I would have preferred a much longer preparation that embodied some of the words of what we heard. But those words that we cut out and we incorporated in the themes.
That's what we're doing, exactly. This is a yes or no, please.
So it's a yes.
Except for where is Melanie's? I can't see Melanie's change on that.
First, it was this word, right?
I added invaluable ecosystems. I added 2 words. Sorry, invaluable.
Oh, okay, both of those.
Yeah,
All right.
and there's.
And so right now, are we mostly talking about
Yes,
the
the bottom
Kate
one.
Melanie version?
Yes.
Okay, because I kind of think Kristen's ideas are incorporated below, so I think we can probably focus here.
Choice between A and B, I'll take B.
Thank you. Amy?
So the vision statement that we adopted 2 weeks ago is not in the.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, but it's not part of what we're discussing right now. We're just discussing whether to take Chris's or Kate and Melanie's. Is that the?
Kate and Melanie's.
Sorry,
Kate and Melanie's.
I'm a little slow here.
We're looking at Kate and Melanie.
Okay, and it's a yes or a no?
Yes.
As opposed to the others?
Correct.
Okay, then it would be a yes.
Yep.
Can I make a comment though? We talked about the Chesapeake heritage. I kind of like when we have more than just Chesapeake heritage. There's a lot of other, I think, there's a lot of other heritage in this county besides just the Chesapeake Bay. You know, we've got farming, we've got horses, we've got sailing. I mean, there's just a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of other heritage things besides just the Chesapeake. Just a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
So protecting the history, not just the heritage, but the history of this area.
So you're suggesting adding in front of heritage, history and heritage.
Yeah, I would say historical heritage as well as the nautical aspects.
So just for point of reference, if we might come up not helpful, when I suggested we put history and Chesapeake before heritage, I didn't say they. I was thinking of it as the
I know.
Chesapeake is the,
I understand that. I understand that. Yeah. And I'm just,
yeah. So from my standpoint, sorry.
or if you say Chesapeake heritage and history, I don't care which way those go. Does that make sense? Or does it matter?
To me, they're both in the same, they're both in that word. But
I think they're also in the
Heritage
best
and
of both the
Yes.
past.
Some
and
are
the
the
future.
same thing.
I think that
Heritage and history are the same.
Okay.
So
Kate, yes.
Remember
Melanie,
history.
yes.
Yes.
And Billy?
Okay.
History and heritage are the same thing.
I'll defer to the majority on whatever majority goes with.
Is that an abstain?
No, I'm voting yes with the
Yes,
majority.
sorry.
However that turns out.
Whatever it is.
Got it. Joel?
Whatever it takes to get
Thomas?
Just with my other comment, real quick, I think we're, all are proud to live, I'd say can be proud to live. It's my whole net. Also, if you like inclusiveness in there, I think we could put one more adjective after heritage, not history, because it's the same thing. But if people felt that they wanted to reflect, they want Anne Arundel County to reflect inclusiveness, I wouldn't have a problem adding. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
Okay, so you're saying after heritage.
If you want to add
history.
inclusiveness, if that's important to a lot of people, because you want to feel like this is a county that is inclusive to everybody, all different walks of life, you could add it. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think that's where it belongs.
Just doesn't fit.
Not
I don't
there.
think that's Fit it into the themes. Yeah, that's part of the themes. I think you're right, but I think that's part of the themes where it's.
Well, so are those other things, valuable ecosystems and such. I just strive for consistency.
Yeah.
I'm a yes.
I hear you.
Okay. John,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Anthony.
Troy was abstaining. Oh.
Throw that grenade out there.
Maybe it should be culture and heritage. I don't know. This should be very intensive words.
Is that better?
Yeah, I like culture and heritage.
Is that better than
So
history?
that makes you think.
Yeah, better than it makes you think, because the history's already up
now.
Yeah, I like that.
Like diversity.
Okay, so by embracing its rich Chesapeake culture and heritage and valuable ecosystems and emerging opportunities, Anne Arundel County embodies the best of both the past and the future, providing its residents a place where all are proud to live, work, learn, and play. Or a place where all can be proud to live, work, learn, and play. We want to go with that.
What is Chesapeake culture? Explain what is about Chesapeake culture.
The culture of the Old Bay, the sailboats, the maritime. I would say, this is just my personal opinion, this is gonna be different for everybody. But Naval Academy, the Chesapeake culture, the fishermen, that would be what I would consider Chesapeake culture.
As far as the agricultural area. You don't have to define it.
That's only on this side, that's true.
I've had a much richer culture that relates to its settling and
Just don't think this
its Revolutionary War. And its horse history, which tradition which predates its sailing history.
You've got enough to define it.
Well, it's always been water. Always been water.
Yeah, because it goes the whole way to the county side.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was enough of a majority.
No, we wouldn't.
By celebrating its rich culture and our heritage, but that's a word too.
To me, heritage covers culture and history.
They were your boss, and heritage, your age,
And it does it in one word.
I think we need some culture.
That's what I'm.
We are.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep my
Just take out the
culture.
word Chesapeake.
I'm there.
That's the only unique part.
Okay, so the suggestion over here, whisperings over here was to somewhere add maritime and agricultural. So maritime and agricultural, maritime history, maritime heritage.
Isn't that the invaluable ecosystem though?
Just don't think it's
Okay.
necessary.
No? Okay,
Personally.
sorry.
Don't do that.
Done.
The one thing to be careful about
What it
adding,
is, what it
is that
defines.
if we make it a
Yeah,
long
now
enough
it's
list,
change
we
whatever.
will miss something.
Right,
Yes.
right, okay. Then I have any other changes? Any people vote? No, okay, then we have 16 people here, 12 yays, 3 nays, 1 abstention.
Sorry.
Okay,
And then you had me voting as yay.
I do. Okay, we need to close this. Are we done?
I think it's good.
Anything else? Okay, we're accepting that vision statement, done. Okay, final draft community boundary regions.
We got the themes to go over.
Oh, vision themes, I'm sorry. Vision themes. Okay, well, we're already behind, so, okay, vision themes.
Okay, so you have in front of you the vision, just should reflect what we just discussed. So the vision themes, these reflect some of the comments that we've gotten. We just got comments from you, Bill, that we'll have to discuss as a group here. So the printout that you have does not reflect those comments, but I have those in front of me. We can go through that. So the introduction, the following overarching themes support this vision and focus on the critical issues identified in the community visioning meetings that when implemented through Plan 2040 will enhance quality of life and ensure residents are proud to live, work, learn, and play in communities throughout the county. So that helps set the stage and reflect back to the vision that we just discussed. The other tweaks that you see in front of you reflect some comments that came from Will. If you remember the last meeting, he was interested in talking about inclusivity, and he suggested these changes down at the bottom. Instead of connected and responsive government, and inclusive, equitable, and responsive government, and then with continuous advancements in technology. One comment he did make that isn't reflected here, and we can discuss it if you want, was the idea of diversity. Further in that same paragraph, engaging and empowering all segments of the county's diverse population. His thought was, do we want to define what diversity is? What is it? Is it geographic, racial, political, gender? How and where will that be defined in the plan? And I think I would probably argue that that comes in our policies and further into the meat of the plan as opposed to here. And unfortunately, he's not here to maybe be a part of this discussion. But I would kind of think the diverse aspect may be okay as it is, and can sort of encompass all of those things at once. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
I agree with you.
Yeah, it's
If
from
you're
the next
diversity, you're getting into too many, or even in political kind of diverse just means there's a difference. Everybody's different.
Okay.
It also gives you a check back. So depending on what you're talking about, you can ask yourself, does this reflect diverse populations?
Diverse.
In terms of whatever is applicable to
Sure.
the thing you're talking about.
Okay. And then, Bill, you had sent some comments today that I think maybe can be reflected. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read those, and I don't know if they're printed out. I don't think they're printed out. Are they? Here. So one comment under strategic economic growth and redevelopment, residents will see growth focused in or adjacent to areas with existing infrastructure and redevelopment. Yay, nay, in or adjacent to these areas?
You up for comments?
Sure.
I think you read, and I love the idea of redevelopment, going where there is infrastructure. I just want to make sure that this isn't saying that there won't be new infrastructure. And I realize up above it says infrastructure and such, but there won't be new development. I like to tend to list it like as priority areas, if you know what I mean. We're going to focus growth in priority areas, which might be new, might be existing. Does that make sense? I just would hate to say, we're only going to do redevelopment. Again, I love redevelopment. I think it makes a world of sense. But you don't want to shut out new development where it's necessary.
Should it say residents will see growth prioritized in areas?
I start writing prioritized.
Is that a better?
I have a problem because in the area where
Encouraged?
Cimarron Park and Arnold, we see so much, and so you're talking about priority funding areas, and we know that area, that corridor up and down Route 2 and Route 3, those are priority funding areas as determined by the state of Maryland. And so we get stuck with all of the excessive growth to the point where we are inundated with all of the traffic and all of the other issues that come along with that. So I just have a concern because that's basically saying that the area that we already are experiencing all these ills will just be more of the same, more of that.
Targeted areas?
Well, I mean, it's just, I don't care if you call it priority
focus.
funding or if you call it targeted area.
As
How about
opposed
encouraged?
to, well, as opposed to maybe planned, because it's the concept that you're reaching for is how do we best utilize the resources we have, not necessarily right, but it's also inclusive of new areas, but it's not being what I think you're getting at is or both of you getting at is you don't want it focused on one or the other. You want it in a balanced.
Yeah.
And how do we best say that? In 10 words or less.
Yeah.
Encourage, maybe.
I like encourage because I think you do want to encourage redevelopment in
But
those.
not exclude it.
Right.
Yeah, completely.
Right.
Encouragement.
Okay.
Emphasis on development.
But it has,
I agree what Tom is saying, what you're saying, and Jessica's in that same position. Is that, somebody, I'd love to do that, somebody is saying, let's shoot all the development up there. And I think the responsibility needs to be shared, because redevelopment may mean increasing the density, which can only aggravate the network of failed roads in your area and in my area.
Yeah, I mean, the next sentence in that paragraph says, development will not overextend county resources. So I think we're saying that development is, if Ritchie Highway's overdeveloped, we're not gonna put something in there that will overextend county resources. So I think we're qualifying that we're targeting those areas, but we're not gonna overextend the capabilities of that area.
That's really interesting, because I read that very differently. So that may mean that we have too much ambiguity. I read that as whatever is done, the county's not gonna have to overpay for it, as opposed to overtax the space,
The current
which is
infrastructure.
the current infrastructure.
And Bill, I think you had some comments on that same sentence as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I had a little confusion as to what truly it meant as well. And just, I simply deleted the portion of the section that said, nor will the county bear the cost of its impact. I understand the intent that the county shouldn't pay for development or support it, but it does bear the cost. It just gets repaid. There's lots of different things, so it's not, I think that's unclear and a little bit dangerous, that terminology. I understand the intent is that, the county and the taxpayers shouldn't pay for development. That's
Could we caveat it to say something like, nor will the county unduly bear? Which means there are some things that are gonna happen, but you're trying to balance that.
That's certainly better.
What would it look like if we changed it to a positive, rather than the county will not, and more into the county will, whatever our goal is for that? So the county will,
To the best of its
the
capability.
development will, or the development will.
Why is the second part of that sentence even necessary?
That was my,
Yeah.
I mean, I know the
Development
intent,
will not
but
overextend.
I just
I
deleted
agree
it.
with you, yeah.
And I just deleted it, because it says the same thing, it says it twice.
Well,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Development will support its own impact.
But in that almost implies that, realize I'm in the minority here, that it does not. And if you see the fees that are paid for traffic impact for schools, and maybe those fees are getting raised right now by current leadership, we understand that. It's just that we're paying the impact that is placed on us, not getting out of it, if that makes sense.
would
So-
you say the end of that again? We're paying the impact of.
Well, developers pay impact fees.
I just couldn't hear.
Yeah, what's the impact of redevelopment? There's a calculation that says you have to pay so much for schools, so much for
I
traffic.
get that. I just
And-
couldn't hear
yeah.
the end of your statement.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to repeat it because I lost what you said. I still don't know what you said.
Now I don't know what I said. You wanna go through that?
so what
I think
you
you said delete the last part of it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
relevant.
Okay, so what we're asking is residents will see growth encouraged in and around areas with existing infrastructure and redevelopment, and then development will not overextend county resources, period.
Correct.
All that says is that it doesn't have anything to do with strategic economic growth. It says the developer is going to pay for all the other costs.
Which they already do anyways, because that's
Well,
what
and
they're gonna
CFOs
increase
and
those
impact fees
costs.
do.
So
Strategically, we're encouraging growth where there's an existing infrastructure.
And then the last sentence, I think, drives it home a little bit more. More mixed use, mixed income developments. variety of house styles.
You saying you like that?
I'm saying it's okay. I think it,
I think that should actually be the first sentence of that.
it definitely kind of
That's a really good point.
brings it
It has
home.
the front, it changes.
Okay, so
It changes the
move
whole
more
thing.
mix to be first, and then residence, and then development.
I also think the term transit-oriented development should be in this somewhere.
What was that?
Transit-oriented, TODs, transit-oriented developments.
Yeah.
I think that some of the
Because that's
smart
the
growth
strategic.
strategies need to be listed specifically, and I'm
Okay, you
How about
find
here?
that place and let me know.
How about here?
Yeah,
Here,
so
it's
again, that's
used,
just push you on
and,
that to
yep,
Yeah,
Because they are.
not necessarily, because you have to take, not if you're doing, not if you're doing smart.
I hear you, let's get that terminology right.
Positively impacts the town.
Okay.
Whatever the development is, it's positively impact, which positively impacts the town. That's all it is.
I don't have the foggiest idea why anybody would want us to put in the words encourage development. If you've ever been in Jessup, if you've ever been in Severna Park, that is just so disrespectful to the residents there.
It doesn't say that. It says residents will seek growth,
So
encourage
if you do
in
need,
and around
if you do need
existing
housing,
infrastructure.
then you need to, everybody needs to share the pain. But just don't keep dumping it on to a community like Jessup or Severna Park or whatever. It's just plain not a polite thing to do.
And you know, you see those, you do see those hills all the time. I mean, those of us who are out in the community, we see the impact of all
I mean,
of this
we've got
development and how
roads
it
that
affects the people
fail.
that are there, that have been there for generations.
You've got road rage, right? You know, why would you do that? Why would you want to make it even worse?
That's why we're doing
Yeah.
DOT, and that's why we're going to the
Well, then don't put words in there that bring up, nightmares. Because that's what you
But
bring
there will
in.
be focused or encouraged in
I
specific
think we
areas.
need to say, Tom needs to be, Tom is on the point where redevelopment, but, let's not, you need a ruler. And I've been saying this in front of hearings. You need a ruler that says, okay, in Severna Park, when it gets to be this, and this, then we need to do this, and this, because we can't saturate that area anymore, and it's unfair for those citizens to be burdened any more than what they are. We need that ruler. Somewhere in this, as we go through this plan, we need a ruler that says, when do you know you're done? And no one for the last 25 years has been able to answer that question for planning, zoning, or any of the policies.
We're going to get in there with our goals and strategies. That's not, we're not there yet.
But it bothers me when you put nightmare words in these documents.
Be a trigger.
It would, because as we all know, there's so much open to
And remember, this is matching what the state's already done. And so the state, if you have existing water and sewer and roads and everything else, then you have open schools and everything else. That is what.
So I like that idea about including smart stuff.
No, the first sentence.
Well,
No, we changed it.
Because
More is the first sentence.
I'm just focusing on this, and now that residents will see a balance of smart growth, focused in areas with existing infrastructure, and redevelopment directed towards older commercial corridors. Specific. Get your infrastructure in place.
Maybe just failing infrastructure.
Residents will see a balance of smart growth areas, focused in areas where existing infrastructure is developed directed towards older commercial corridors. And then to repeat it, you just said infrastructure in the first part of that sentence. Get rid of that last.
To get rid of the last part, yeah.
Yeah, get rid of that. Okay. And with corridors, which you've already said that, when we're talking about smart growth, which is a plan for growth and for the balance.
Can you make that typeface bigger?
Like
really bigger?
I get you scrolling. So.
Just scroll them out.
Yeah. So we can actually read each paragraph.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out where in that range of.
Yeah, now I'm
But,
move back.
Okay, thank you, Pat, good
I
job.
like what you did, Pat. Can I ask whether we need to say residents will see? No, could we simply say there will be a balance?
There will be, I think that's good, yeah, there will be a balance.
Okay, you wanna keep going, Pat, with Bill's suggestion?
Sure, so that was that paragraph. Under community character, conservation of agricultural lands, parks, forests, open space, and abundant fish and wildlife resources, along with well-designed neighborhoods, will contribute to the health and well-being of our communities. So that would be an addition here, along with well-designed neighborhoods.
Yes.
Did you do anything well designed?
Yes.
I think everything here is well designed. You can say that, right?
Actually, community design, something.
It's just so subjective.
Okay.
I'm
I
a little bit more
would actually agree.
I just say, I would like to know who's gonna enlist DPW to change our, street codes, guidelines, standards to match what we just wrote there. Just saying.
Yeah, right.
Oh, Ellen?
So I just wanted to go back to the strategic economic growth. You know, I think we need to eliminate the word more mixed use. It's just mixed use and then you get mixed income development. More, it's not a word that needs to be there. It's just a statement that mixed use is blah, blah.
Okay.
And I don't think we need development on either Georgetown County resources. It's a throwaway phrase.
We deleted that.
So delete the whole thing.
Development will not oversend.
Doesn't mixed use refer to a building, not refers to like
Right.
things that go on.
Like parole, town center, use restaurants, apartment, work, office, building.
It's really hard to hear you, Dan.
Okay, what else? Come on.
So we just made that one addition to this community character paragraph. Are there other items?
So there was a comment, well-designed is very, very, very subjective. Do we want to say, community design neighborhoods? Or do we?
I agree with that. I think well designed, your well designed is different from their well designed. And
Yeah, for every one of us
How
would
about
have a
thoughtfully
different
designed?
thoughtful, and I'll take that too.
But that almost suggests that people lining up the neighborhoods aren't being thoughtful.
Well, that's,
If you look at some of them, they are.
that's, at least it puts it out there.
You like to say that?
I'm fine with it.
All right.
And it's at least saying that there will be increase.
Okay. That's kidding.
Yep.
No.
I kind of cut the middle.
Thank you, grammar folks.
Okay, anything else on that? We gotta keep going, guys, quickly.
We gotta keep going, but the architect is gonna have to come back to that, the one before, the variety of housing styles and designs. I don't have to do it right now, but up above that, at the very top line, yeah. The variety of housing styles and designs. I can look at that. I don't think that says what we really intend for it to say, and I'm the architect, and I'm saying that. But we can move on, and I'll think about it.
Okay, Billy.
You have a.
Just a comment on what I was hearing from a couple of members on what's gonna be the ruler. And the GDP won't, it's policy, it's vision, it's not the law. If you want to govern it, you would go back to the county code prior to 2005 on adequate facilities law. There, if you had a failing road intersection or a failing level of service on a road, it stopped development from proceeding until that level of service was restored at least to like a D or C level. And so you would ask, or a starting place would be to return the adequate facilities law prior to 2005, and you would have teeth to where the developers would have to solve the intersection problems if they're going to put more cars on that road. So that's where you can go on how do you get it to where you're not hoping for it, you're making it so.
Thank you for pointing that out. Good
Unfortunately,
information
that
to have.
doesn't seem to apply in just West County, but thank you.
Oh, it
It's
would
before
everywhere in the county.
2005.
Excuse me?
It would everywhere in the county. Like if you think of
Well, you would
Forest
think-
Drive
yes, you would
from
think it would,
2005 and prior, they were doing court cases on a de facto moratorium because of school capacity, because of roads, and it was successfully defended. If you went back to the 2005 language, you would be happy.
What you're talking about is the ideal situation in code, but what happens in practical application is the hearing officer, the director of planning and zoning, and the board of appeals can make exceptions. That's what happens. So I understand what you're
Yeah, I
saying.
really think I can change it.
Okay, guys, sorry, I appreciate the information, but we really have to move on. I apologize, but we're still on the 5 o'clock thing, and it's almost 6, so let's keep going.
Okay.
Inclusive, equitable, and responsible government, please.
So, with smart technology, there will be more opportunities than ever for county government to reach all populations with accurate, up-to-date information. That was one suggested addition. And then there was a question about this: engaging and empowering all segments of the county's diverse population will ensure the county evenly delivers resources and services. And Bill, I think you were saying.
I just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a question also that we don't evenly deliver
Yeah,
resources.
we
throughout
don't,
the
we don't
entire
need
town.
to evenly deliver. It's where the target is.
First part doesn't really,
Right.
It should be-
engaging and empowering. But definitely agree on the second.
Okay, so we're gonna take out, so evenly.
And then,
We're taking out what? I'm sorry.
Evenly, the county delivers resources.
I would say either targeted or as needed.
Targeted.
Delivers targeted resources. Is that? Am I on the same page?
Yeah,
Okay.
Because it's not evenly throughout the county.
yeah, because evenly, because that's, you don't need it.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen's gonna work on that and fix it. Okay.
Okay, and then the next phrase, creates and enforces thoughtful zoning and development regulations. So creates and enforces thoughtful zoning and development regulations. Is that?
And my thought there is that we need to develop codes that try to get us to our goals here.
So they,
So it's
code.
creating them and then it's enforcing them.
That was code regulations.
Yeah, just code regulations. Whatever's
Yeah.
just want to enforce what's there. I don't think we
Yeah,
need more thoughtful in there.
Okay, so we're thinking yes.
Enforce it. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Zoning and development regulations, and you had also mentioned an additional clause in here to protect, that protects property rights as a separate clause altogether.
No. I think we got enough on that one.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by offers equality of opportunity and implements values of, I mean, that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
The equality of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
I don't,
both of the last two?
we're talking about equality of opportunity for the developers and builders, I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, equality of opportunity, okay, again, this is what I would say. Equality of opportunity is to say that I have an opportunity to go to a farmer's market here versus a farmer's market there, or I have equal opportunity to go to school here or there, or buses, to get buses to go here
I don't
or
see
there.
that.
Part
I
of the
don't see
school
that in
zone
that
area, or,
sense.
you know,
I don't see
School,
that.
yeah.
parks, availability, yeah.
Remember, this is about government.
see that.
We're kind of.
I
would not add the phrase protects property rights. Why not?
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna come back to that.
Because I think that means some very different things to people. And I think it's a heavy lift, I don't think we want to go there.
Okay.
I would, however, add environmental in front of stewardship. I think stewardship is a little too open, and I think what we need is environmental stewardship there.
I really don't see I don't understand what offers equality of opportunity really means.
My point
In the context of what it was proposed, it was that no part of the county got left out, that there were a number of kinds of things that happened
And that's,
on a part, but it might not have ever.
and that's a lawsuit as soon as that happens. I mean, so to me,
I
that's,
think that was the context of the way it was presented.
Yeah.
If you're already talking about developing in high
But that's-
priority areas, then
enforcing
you're
zoning
taking that
development.
off the board already, of equality of opportunity, because you're making designations in certain parts of the county where things can happen and where they can't happen. Am I,
Or is this, since it's under the heading inclusive, equitable, and responsive government, is
It's
referring
not
to
relevant.
facilities and services that the county provides.
Right.
It's not targeting for
Because these are under
development.
the key services.
then what are we targeting?
That's the government aspect, including the citizens, that's why we're breaking it down.
Sustainability, stewardship,
We're not
community
talking about the
building.
buildings anymore.
Okay, you're talking about the government program.
Government sponsored program. Government citizen relations.
I don't have a problem with the phrase. I think I understand.
It might need to be.
I don't see if I really want it.
Okay, so I guess we retain that for now.
The only thing I can think is to say offers countywide opportunity.
No.
I don't like to call it.
Countywide,
Yeah, countywide opportunity, if that's,
Offers opportunity,
offers opportunity.
put it that way, because it may not be countywide.
well, I mean, the concept that it was just brought up was talking about South County versus North County or whatever, and hopefully you'd have a library here or a library there. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, it was more about social justice, wasn't it?
Right.
I read into it.
Well, I think government responsiveness.
Can you go up just a little so we can see the, or down, yeah.
Where are we there? Okay.
So engaging and empowering all segments of the county's diverse population will ensure the county delivers targeted resources and services, creates and enforces zoning and development regulations, offers opportunity there now, doesn't say anything, and implements the values of sustainability, environmental stewardship, and community building throughout the county.
So maybe it's already incorporated here in the beginning of that sentence.
Take it out.
Take it out.
I don't think you need it.
Yeah.
I'd like to make one comment, and I have to, unfortunately, I have to leave. But through this whole document, I haven't seen what to me is the most important word of all, and planning. We've got to plan all this.
Mostly on this responsive government is that we need to reflect on the ability for citizens to have inputs. Right now, if you live 301 foot away from a proposed zoning change, you can't say a word about it. So the whole community is left out of decisions by the current repulsive laws and regulations in this county. And I think that needs to be reflected so everybody, the government is responsive and it accepts inputs from the community right there. But
I wonder if maybe notifications can be something that we address in.
it's not notification, right?
Well, it says the sentence before.
whether you have standing.
But the sentence right before that, we don't want to get into nitty gritties. With continuous advancements in technology, there'll be more opportunities than ever for the county government to reach all populations with information.
Maybe that needs to be two-way. That's reaching out, but it doesn't talk about eliciting feedback back, to his point. So maybe that needs to reflect
But
that
the
it's a
first
loop.
sentence say that.
Here again, you got a lot of good field words, but you gotta hit it hard and say the community has standing in determining the outcomes of zoning changes.
Well, wouldn't that be in a whole series of definitions that we don't have at the present time?
Well, that goes back to Pat's point,
It's a
planning.
concept that Pittman talked about and was going to act on, and as far as I know, not a darn thing's been done.
Again, that's one strategy, that we're not there yet. We're bigger.
Okay, we've got one more. Let's go, let's keep going.
Before we move on, I've got something else too. I want to go back to on that particular one about community involvement, the responsive government. The property rights doesn't necessarily, we're just throwing something else, something that in my time in constituent services and my time in the county, a lot of what happens, a lot of decisions that are made within planning and zoning, administrative hearing, board of appeals, these decisions will and very often can and will impact the property rights of the people who are already there. So if you have a subdivision that's going in and it's severely impacting where you live with water runoff and all, that's the main thing that we're seeing right now is a lot of water runoff issues. That's impacting the property rights of the people who live there already. And I just think that that's important to county, because county government does not respond to that. They don't respond appropriately.
Which is why I didn't want to put the term property rights in there, because so many view it as a one-sided, the property right of the property owner who wants to make the change and develop. That's what they
Sure,
see.
but that's-
They do not, I agree with you, they do not
So what are you
recognize the property
suggesting?
rights of the surrounding.
Well,
Are you addressing this?
just somehow put, to me, property rights means the rights of the people that live there, that have property that's being impacted by what's happening. Well, that's true.
Okay, Ellen has a comment about what you're commenting on.
Well, it relates to that and a whole bunch of other things that we need to, at some point in time, consider definitions of a couple of different things. The definition of what is a use along the road. What is the definition of the kind of processes that govern
And that's
property?
going down.
We'll have a glossary, we'll have
Yeah,
a
right.
glossary and if needed, definitions added to the code, because that's the strategy
Well,
that we need to
yeah, and that may make some code changes, but we need to work through what those changes are.
So let me build on what you just said, Ellen, and that is where I was headed was, can we start to create, as a process point, a list of strategies? Because a number of times, Gary said, or somebody has said something and it says, well, that's a strategy, but we're losing them. And if we could kind of capture those so that when we go to the point where we're gonna write strategies, we have a cross-check to see if we've at least talked about them.
And I've been keeping a file, because as we've gone around the county for the last 2 years and heard, and we've been keeping a file of potential strategies. Now, whether or not, those need to be vetted by people that were implementing public works or whatever, but yes, we are keeping.
So can we also create one from the discussions out of this group?
We would nominate you to secretary to
create the list. No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Yes, it's a running list, it's a running list.
Everybody can start your own list. Then we'll merge them. We'll merge them. Okay, we have one more.
So there was one more comment under resilient environmentally, should say environmentally sound. And sustainable communities. The first sentence, land use decisions affecting future growth and development will recognize the value and strive to balance good neighborhood planning while retaining open space, restoring forest cover on one.
There we go, good neighborhood planning, that's
So-
password planning,
We'll,
while retaining open space, restoring
we'll
forest
recognize
cover.
the value of, let me see if I can type it out here. Okay. Will recognize the value of and strive to balance good neighborhood planning, comma, while retaining open space, restoring forest cover, and so
That
on.
be preserving and restoring forest cover. Thank you.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break, and then we've got to come back and do these community boundaries tonight. So
Do I have an
let's
opportunity
focus
to comment on this last thing, because restoring forest cover is like, really? Do you realize what that really means and what it's done to this county? I mean, basically what that means, this is profit-based land use plan. And that means you come in with the bulldozer, you strip the land down to the clay or ground, and then you put in seedlings, and 30 years from now, you'll have some trees, maybe, if they don't die. You know, go look at Columbia and see how they've done their development. And, you know, they've preserved large trees. I mean, those trees don't come up overnight. So what I've seen time and time again is we just allow the development to take place by stripping the land. And when you say restoring, that is what they're doing. They clear the land, they take down all the beautiful trees, and then they restore them with seedlings. That don't work. That just don't work.
Did you attend the open house, the town hall last night on the,
I did not know.
Okay, all of you. So
yeah, that would be helpful for you to.
preserving, they will be preserving, and for other places that they aren't preserved, then
Well,
they will be.
development
preserved.
should be, I don't even like to use the word, building, construction should be done in consideration of the existing forest and all the animals. All that should be planned and respected. But
And
to go in there and
that's
just
what
tear
the-
down trees.
That's what the draft of
It's
the bill is.
disrespectful.
So, he's working on that. 5-minute break, we'll be back, and we'll. Who we missing? Okay, we had,
Because that's the only real adjustment to the plan.
Yeah, that wasn't actually on the map. No, yeah.
I thought these were the only ones, was in this, was in this area.
Yeah, because when it happens, it starts to die.
okay, so, are we almost there? Almost. Okay, so the question was, the very last sentence was under resilient, environmentally sound and sustainable communities. The last sentence says, energy conservation and efficiency efforts will combine with clean energy production to help the county meet a net zero goal for overall energy needs. And the question was, does the county have a net zero goal? And the answer is, and they're looking it up right now to make
No,
sure.
I don't know where, somebody added that, right?
Yeah, I think we need to, it's been there for a while. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, what if it was state? So we need to clarify
Was
that.
who?
Just think if the state had.
So that's a vision of the state perhaps, but not the county.
Well, if it's the state, then the county has to adhere to the state.
As a rule, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a vision thing, right?
Yeah.
We could, the area that I've highlighted there,
Contributing to it, yeah.
would it suffice if we just pull that out? What's
Yes.
highlighted there?
Yes. While that is all good, because we don't know what that goal is, that net zero goal is defined, you can't.
Right now, we don't have percent goal.
For when, what year?
No, our RPS, our renewable energy portfolio, but there's a lot of ways to look at that.
That's correct. It's so.
So if we took that out, would that work? Yes, it is. You don't think, you're thinking it won't.
Well, in 20 years, we don't know what the state's gonna have as a goal
To
or
help the
regulation.
county meet their overall energy goal.
Goal or need?
Goal and needs,
Well, what's the goal?
whatever it is at the time.
That's very
Well, then it
subjective.
would be needs.
And if they don't have one, if we don't have one specifically identified. So I would say, energy needs.
Yeah, at least leave it like that. Do it like
Yeah,
that.
we do.
And so you're saying combine clean energy production, help the county, or,
Conservation.
Conservation.
Back to the word first.
Conservation.
Go from the first.
You want to see what it said originally?
Okay, well, can we leave it to?
Yeah, I think it's goal, but I don't, it doesn't.
Okay, so the staff, we'll leave it to them to tweak it to make it read correctly.
It could be suggested, instead of the help the county, we'll combine with clean energy production to meet the county's goals for overall energy.
It doesn't say that one.
And if they don't have any, it just means they have to get them.
Okay, thank you, Thomas.
Okay. So at the last meeting, we discussed some of the overall region planning boundaries that we'd come up with. And there was, we wanted to come back and talk about a couple of areas, because I think, so we went back and I'm sorry, but we tried to have GIS put on this TV to help facilitate this discussion, and that whether possible, but, so we're working off the PDFs here. I think one area where we still need some discussion is to look at this area surrounding Millersville, the Millersville community, which is in pink here, and the Crownsville and Severna Park boundaries. I think Amy, you had mentioned bringing Severna Park to encompass all of, was it Brightview, up to Brightview Drive?
East-west.
I said Brightwood, but we're gonna make it east-west. That makes more sense because of the school district cutoff.
Okay, east-west.
East-west is, Brett's parents. I don't see it on here. It's south of Brightview.
Yeah, let me pull it.
Oh, yeah, it's right in the middle, smack dab in the word Millersville.
Millersville? Okay.
So it goes, that's that.
Yeah, it's that.
So it also, the green line is also the census block group line, and consider the idea of following census block group as much as possible to the degree of being able to analyze data in the future. So
that's helpful.
I'm sorry, you read that because I didn't hear what you were saying. I didn't get that.
So that's
East-west is what?
Go back to the,
that's geopolitics.
yeah.
So the green line is the census block group line. Following that could help in the future analyze data. So does it make sense to follow east-west until it jogs down south? Or do you want to include that sort of southern notch in a sense?
So this is east-west here.
Yep. So we talked about the northern boundary being east-west.
Yeah.
The green line here is the census block group boundary. However, it jogs down just a little bit here and then comes back up. Do you prefer it to come straight across east-west, or do you want it to follow the census block group line?
Straight across east-west.
I think it should just come straight across east-west.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's.
And then it jogs up a little bit more, but can we head over to the east a little bit?
Yeah, and I would say all the way over east to Ritchie Highway, where east-west comes out and hits Ritchie Highway.
Okay. Okay, so east-west, the entire northern boundary.
Right.
Okay.
And out to Veterans, now then, everything east of Veterans Highway coming down. The west side of Veterans Highway
Would not be part of
it's
the.
not, no, because it's all commercial and all that.
And that fits well with the block group
Yeah.
boundary as well.
However, what happens then, if you look at your printout of the map, you are left with a slight pink sliver of Millersville.
Where?
So,
That will go up
So-
to 3.
Yeah, so this area here is part of the community of Millersville. And so that's going to be cut off, and that would need to then, I guess, go into the
I think it just be part of
Region
the seven.
3.
Yeah, Region 3. Great.
okay.
Now, remember, we don't have a Southern representative tonight, so anybody who is familiar with all this, we need input. We need to make sure, and Glen Burnie, it'll be added to the north.
So, you know, look at that,
Which
like
is okay.
where the Old Mill Road.
Is east-west?
No, it's further down.
So east-west is here.
In the word Millerville.
Yes.
See,
So, Amy, then, based on your comment here, everything from east-west down, Veterans east, and from this little notch here of the Severn River north becomes Severna Park, the community, as well as region planning area number 4. Is that what you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
well, what do you mean by the community?
So the community boundary is the green. The pink area here, or purple area, is the community of Millersville. The red lines are the region planning areas.
Okay.
So there's two things to sort of consider here as we change boundaries. Are we moving the community boundary as well, or just the region boundary?
Does the community boundary really matter in that sense?
I mean, it is technically part of Millersville as far as zip code and all that stuff goes.
Okay.
But it's for the planning area, it should be part of the 4 Severna Park.
Okay, so we would keep the Millersville capital letter community as is, and just move the red line, the region planning area boundary, to what we just discussed.
Correct.
East, west,
Yes.
veterans.
Because the
Yeah.
community would
Okay.
the community representation would be Millersville, not Severna Park.
Okay. And so keep that in mind later then when we
Okay.
jump down to.
Does everybody
Brownsville.
understand what we're saying? Because we need to make sure, because we're gonna be going through all of them this way. The communities, Millersville is still the Millersville community, separated from the Severna Park community, but put together for regional map number 4.
Because they are really, as far as,
Right.
with
Okay.
they're part
And
of
then
the
that-
One big happy
Yeah,
family.
Then that
One
northern
big happy
part
family.
of Millersville.
Will become part of 3.
Right.
Which includes Glen Burnie. Yeah.
It will not be, it will become part of planning, the region planning area 3,
Right.
which is comprised of Glen Burnie, Severn, and Millersville. A portion of Millersville.
Yep.
How far
Yep,
south
that
does
makes
it
sense.
go in there?
To,
That's the next question is
Okay.
the Severn Run area. I think a comment was the headwaters of the Severn being the boundary. Do we bring the Severn Run natural area all within, say, the region number 3, and then that forms the northern border of the region 6 Crownsville area, and
So,
Yeah.
right, there are some comments that Region 6, the border, the north border should be Veterans Highway, not,
region 6 and Crownsville, right?
It would be the original boundary from the 2000 plan.
okay?
You wouldn't
Right,
have-
so
you
now we're
won't
just
take
talking
that 4
boundaries.
square miles
Let's
from
just talk
Brownsville.
boundaries. So it would come up and go across Veterans Highway, right, Billy? And
Well, we're
then-
going, it's up to 97, but you can use Veterans Highway or the old Maryland 3. But
Okay.
it would be that the 4 square miles that was deleted from the Brownsville regional plan would be restored as the boundary existed from the year 2000 until now.
okay.
Okay, we need help on the other corner though too, because the corner in the map got cut off before, right?
Can you say that again? Billy?
Well, go to your other image where you can see how everything behaves, with the adjacent regional areas.
Yes.
So, where you see number 6, you're just driving up Route 178 where it hits 97, and that pink area would be returned to Region 6.
Okay, so that area.
So it goes from the headwaters of the Severn River, and then it follows I-97 or the Veterans Highway, which runs parallel down to Region 5.
So to this area.
So like at the upper end would be Dykus Mill Road as the upper
just-
side?
Yeah. I like
It
that.
would be, it's this area here.
Okay, so bring all of that into both the Crownsville community and into the Region 6.
This would be
plan.
Region 6, and then I'm not sure how you will
Okay.
fine tune it between the communities. And then also, this whole area didn't exist until this process. All of this land was either taken from Brownsville, or it was taken from Odington, or it was taken from Severn. These, Severna Park, Severn, Odington, and Brownsville, the original small area plans, they were carved up to create that. And I guess I would need to have explained why we have this gerrymandered area where the original maps were more. They seem to be more symmetrical.
Be specific about what you mean by gerrymandered.
Well, if you go to maybe 75%, so that we can see the whole county, keep going out. When you look at these areas here, well, you know what? I'm misreading the Millersville as Region 3. So if I look at Region 3, forget the last comment, I'm just looking at this pink area of Millersville, which were parts of other small area plans. But, you know, of interest to Crownsville is this piece right here. This is all rural area here. It has a half a dozen scenic roads, 30 historic buildings. Most importantly, it has open space that's unprotected, which means ripe for development. And with the addition of, I don't know if anybody has an update on Brownsville State Hospital. I know Bobby Neal was supposed to give an opinion of whether he's going to transfer it to the county or not, like he's due
There's
on
no
that.
update on it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But that-
okay, so while you're still up there, sorry, we need to talk about Severn Run natural environmental area. Are you gonna, do we want to go from the headwaters of the Severn and cut the Severn River natural environment area in half?
Our area of interest would be from here, and then as this goes all the way up into Glen Burnie, you know, I don't know that, you know, because it's so linear.
So why don't you go down and make all Severn Run part of 3? So why not
Join all of that.
go down?
So draw the boundary, the region plan
Yeah,
boundary.
so draw the boundary
For
here
Region 6.
for Region 6.
No, well, yeah.
Region 6
Mhm.
would be this way, and all of Severn Run would be part of
I'm
3.
for that.
So we don't cut Severn Run in half. Okay? You're nodding, Will? You're good with that? Anybody know anything from the Severn side that we need to know about?
Are you saying that just at the headwaters, it's included in the Crownsville
No,
layout?
no. It would come here and go there, and go, this would be part of 3. All of
Okay.
Severn Run would be 3,
Okay. That's fine.
okay? And then this
And
line
that area
here,
also-
going up to Brightview would be 4, and then this line here going down would be 6. We got a consensus, yay, okay.
Can I double check something against, again, the block group? Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you all, appreciate it. Are we good? Everybody? Okay, moving on. Then, sorry. Okay. The summary of the survey results have been printed out. Oh. What do you want? Sorry. The map. Yes, ma'am.
I had asked that in the drawings, see that the cities and that has to be identified specifically, because it crosses boundary.
It will be.
Yeah. Crosses boundary lines.
Yep.
Can you send us the PDF of the breakout of each of the sections?
As separate ones you want, separate
Right.
maps?
You mean the 9 regions?
Right.
Okay.
Because then you can see, probably, you can see the street level at that point.
Yeah.
And there are questions
This
about.
is an obvious way of printing it out. I'm sorry about that.
Did everybody have a chance to look at the document that at the top says proposed region planning area process? Did you have a chance to look at it?
No.
Do I hear a no?
No?
Sort of? Okay, you guys, homework, please,
We
homework.
should probably table this then, so let me just explain it, so when you do go home and do homework. So part of the bill that got adopted, it says new small areas will be, incorporated into the GDP. It also specifies the GDP layout, the implementation process and schedule, and also the composition of the planning areas. And so we've laid out a draft. The first page is kind of tells you what an overall planning process, the time it takes. That's just for your information. It's not, wouldn't be part of the requirement. And then the second page sort of lays out a draft of what would go in the plan so that they all have some consistency. That's one of the comments that we've heard, is that amongst the small area plans, there wasn't consistency between them about what was covered and not covered. And then I've sort of taken the liberty to add a few things based on comments we've heard over the last couple of years about what wasn't working. Measurement, one. So let's look at that, and then the composition of the committee, suggesting 11, a good number to work with, 11 times 9, gives you a good representation over the county.
Do we know, has anybody checked if 11 works, given the redistribution of regions and the communities that fall within these regions?
These will be 11 representatives per region, so
Correct.
within the region plan.
Right, and
But what she's asking is how many communities are within those, and does that make it equitable?
since that's what we change, how many regions we have, to make sure that fits.
Okay.
So we can discuss this at the next meeting, save some time to provide feedback. Maybe if you provide it ahead of time, that would be great.
Friday before the next meeting is September 4th. County Council on the 3rd, Monday the 2nd is Labor Day. So Friday before, please, that's a short turnaround. That is next Friday. Please read this and provide questions to the staff so they have time to answer, especially since it's a long holiday weekend.
Can I ask a question about the 11 people per region?
That's just proposed. Yeah.
Are we supposed to be getting those 11 people?
No, it's just suggesting a number, and it says minimum, I think the bill says minimum of, so less than 9. To think about what's good size to work with, what would represent the communities well, given, I mean, we could even write in there no less than.
It's not one size fits all.
Right,
Correct. Right. So, and that's what we're saying. So look at your communities within your regions, you each have them, and make sure everybody's represented, please. And it won't be us doing it. Remember, the CAC is done.
The actual people would not be identified, no. It's just how many, and,
Setting up
And it may not be the
yeah,
same.
setting up the structures.
Okay, homework, got it?
Yeah.
Thank you. The summary of the survey results. They printed these all out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I know some of you have read them online, hopefully. And please take it for a weekend reading and nighttime reading. I'm not giving you a nighttime reading, weekend reading, so you read it. And be prepared to come back and be able to represent and know what we're looking at. I was surprised actually by the way things were ranked.
I was very surprised. I didn't think it was going to be that way.
Yeah, let me go over this a little bit, and then I'm gonna only briefly touch on the transportation and the kind of land use pieces, because we're gonna go over those. We'll revisit those in more depth before we once we get into those policy discussions. So, but I will go through just briefly, and then I want to focus on the policy areas and kind of set the stage for our discussion next week. So, overall, this online survey, we had over 1,600 respondents. We allowed for open comments on virtually everything, and we ended up with 1,800 comments, which are in your packet there. And the top communities that provided responses were from Severna Park, Pasadena, Lake Victoria, and Crofton. So that is it in a nutshell. And in terms of the transportation and mobility piece, there were several ways to kind of look at the information that came through. And so the PDF that you had, the first page of your document differs a bit because we've added an additional graph to kind of show the most #1 rankings and which priorities were prioritized more often than others. And so in terms of the #1 rankings, upgrading corridors and cores had the most #1 rankings, followed by enhancing the bike network. But the most frequently ranked, given any rank at all, was walkable communities and enhancing the bike network. And then the highest average rank, which is now in your handout, is the best average ranks for upgrading corridors and cores and then walkable communities. So again, we'll revisit these as we get into the discussion of transportation policies and such. We asked several questions related to development, redevelopment, and asked for these for people to think in terms of their community and then in terms of county-wide. And so in terms of businesses and services, both in the community and in the county, the top response was, my community does not need more stuff, nor does the county. And then followed by small-scale retail and personal services, both community and county. In industrial, it was, at the community level, again, my community does not need this, followed by the renewable energy option, solar and wind. At the county level, top was renewable energy, followed by recycling. In housing, both community and county, the community county does not need more housing. At the county level, that was followed by single family housing. And then in terms of other needs, it was the same both at the community and the county level. The top desire was for the rehab of existing park and rec facilities, followed by access to water and green space. So you can, in your handout, there's a table that shows how these break out by community if you want to take a look specifically for the community. So have a look at that. But I do want to get into the policy areas. We asked a number of questions. And so as background to this, we got a PDF linked in there to sort of explain what our policy areas currently. And there are 3. The targeted policy area, managed growth, targeted managed growth and rural areas. So those are our 3 existing policy areas. And so the idea was to ask if we wanted to have people look at the potential for some additional policy areas. And so these were the responses. With regard to the rural and agricultural policy area, the character there would be farms, agricultural, heritage, limited extension of public services and facilities, and then resource-sensitive policy areas. So these would be 2 new policy areas. And the comments that we got, these were ranked pretty high. For 4.3 for resource-sensitive areas, that was the highest ranked. among respondents. And among the open comments, you can scan them in the document that you have as well, but just in kind of generally scanning it, there seems to be general support for both of these policy areas. So the managed growth policy area, we so these would replace the managed growth policy area. So we pitched the idea of a peninsula policy area that develops policies or promotes some of the issues related to areas that are served by one corridor, and these may or may not be within the PFA or have public sewer service. And then a neighborhood preservation policy area that focuses or identifies stable residential communities. There may be some local existing commercial nodes within those, and public sewer typically would be existing or planned, and other infrastructure as needed. These were rated, so the neighborhood preservation was the second highest rated out of 5 stars. And the peninsula areas received a 3.8. Again, take a look at the open comments for yourself. A lot of them, for the peninsula areas, people reinforce that traffic on the single main artery does tend to be an issue. People like the idea of environmental protection needed and the idea of limiting development in those areas. And in terms of neighborhood preservation, there seemed to be a lot of support for that idea. People also expressed concerns about limiting, there were several comments related to, is this neighborhood preservation policy area going to somehow limit diversity, whether that's by race, income, or promoting inequity? So I think some people thought that that could be potentially problematic, the language, the way that we talk about that. So we may want to really think about how we define these and make sure that we're addressing those concerns going forward. And then there were some comments on the need for more housing variety or varied density. So thinking about that in the context of this going forward. And then in terms of targeted growth, we asked about 3 potentially new areas. There are two that are existing. We have the current targeted growth development policy area already includes our 3 town centers, which are Oakton, Parole, and Glen Burnie, and they include the commercial revitalization areas that are already identified. So we didn't ask about those because they exist. We asked about a potential transit-oriented policy area, a village center policy area, and a corridor management policy area. And the latter would be focused on existing developed corridors that maybe need some redevelopment, revitalization. And each of these would have a master plan, a transit district plan, or a corridor management plan that would help guide development and policies for those areas. And so the ratings for these did receive the lower ratings among these. The transit-oriented received a 3.5. All of them were 3.5, 3.7. But among some of the open comments, there were a whole lot of comments about we need to stop development or really limit development. That was a big comment through all 3 of these. With transit-oriented, people reiterated some concerns with crime. There were some comments related to putting some housing and density in proximity to transit-oriented areas, and then including bike ped links from the surrounding areas. That was kind of a theme in both the transit-oriented and the village center areas. Also for the village center, I think there was some concern about where we would put those, make sure we have community buy-in, and that if there is a defined village center, that be something that the community has buy-in and is tailored to that specific area. So I think if we were to apply something like the village center to an area like deal. That may look very different than if it were applied, say, somewhere in North County. In corridor management, there seemed to be a lot of support for revitalizing, redeveloping these developed areas versus developing in undeveloped areas now, tearing down forests and redeveloping or developing that. Comments which you've heard before about balancing the infrastructure that would support the corridors, and then again the comment of how this applies differently or tailored to the different parts of the counties and the different corridors that may be developed. So that's this is sort of the question for you all, and what we'll discuss next week is if we were to develop a map that has 9 policy areas with these designations: town centers, village centers, commercial revitalization areas, transit-oriented, corridor management, neighborhood preservation, peninsula policy, rural and agricultural policy area, and then resource-sensitive policy area. Are we covering what we need to in the county? Do we need more? Do we need less?
I guess my question would be about the transit-oriented area. I would see that overlapping with possibly town centers. So are they exclusive? How do you handle them when they have, they should have possibly integral policy? Does that make sense?
Some of them will overlap, but we'll have to, they might have similar policies. We'll have to address these individually as we get to maybe areas where they might conflict or overlap. And so I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Your expectation that when we talk about this, we're actually going to create maps that say a resource-sensitive policy area might be mine, for instance, because of the waterfront, or the peninsula might be the Mayo Peninsula. Is that where you're headed with this? If you could help us think about what you want us to do with it.
Would be divided into policy areas. Now, granted, resource sensitive is going to run throughout the county, but it would identify the most sensitive areas in the county.
And I'm assuming it's not that there's one of these, that it's wherever it applies.
Correct.
Right, yeah. And
Every
there will overlap.
property will fall within one of these
Every
categories
property
within your
will fall
regional
within
planning area.
one of these policies, and it sets the framework then for land use planning.
Does this seem like, to me, it seems like this is a lot of different policy areas. So I guess I wonder if that's a lot to take on, and if there really could be some consolidation that would benefit and for less work for staff. But maybe I don't know all the different.
I think the lessons learned trying to implement is that there were 2 people, especially the manager, and we didn't really address transit areas. So that is one area that we talked about needing to be a targeted area to look at this. That doesn't mean down the road it will actually become a transit-oriented area because it hasn't been studied like that yet. But this would set the framework, maybe a symbol on the map, on the land use map, to be studied further either during the region plans or even their own separate section plans. So, but we need to identify it up front so that it's consistent with the master plan and that we've thought of it in that.
Question. On the peninsula policy area, when you're looking at the end of the road for the peninsula, how are you defining that policy area?
Well, that's what we're.
That's what we have to figure out.
Because it's really the traffic way back here that may not be going all the way there, but that impacts here. So it's a major land use consideration, correct? But it's not fun, I mean.
We haven't defined them yet.
Right.
That's what we have to do.
That's the next step is are these something to, are these something to start taking a look at, and maybe we do end up dropping a couple, after we've had a further discussion about it, but, are there other things in the line that we might need a policy area? They weren't identified in the comments, I didn't hear any additional.
Yeah. Do we actually have any policies in the county about neighborhood preservation as it stands right now?
It was in the GDP, was never done.
No, and it was also throughout small area plans about neighborhood preservation.
I think it needs more definition than what I'm seeing up there too, in terms of how we're benefiting the communities and improving them.
And the definition will evolve as we develop these policy areas if we decide to keep them.
Okay.
Well,
So trying to see the holistic picture and the timeline we're working with GDP. So when we run with this, the next steps are you guys are going to go back to the drawing board, make up the maps, do the definitions, then you're going to come back to us to see how they look, and then we'll get more into the weeds of, well, in this specific area.
So you'll have a visual.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Tweak that, and this won't be something, this will go along as
lots of drafts.
We'll tweak it as the plan develops.
Okay.
And remember, if you remember some time ago in a previous administration, there was a bill that went through for the rural conservation line. And everybody wanted to be on that side of the line. Why can't we be on that side of the line? So this helps so that we can define the different areas and how we're going to administer those policies. Yeah.
Can you just go back to that earlier? I have two questions. Where it's the different policies. There you go. So, two questions. What is the difference between a town center and village center?
So the town center, the three that we have now, are larger areas, village.
Higher density.
Yeah, it's village is lower density.
This helps, right?
Yeah,
This
so
is
it's a good definition.
Okay, I missed that. I
It's in your packet.
Okay, and then my other question is, or kind of a statement, is I don't know, okay, I think these should be policy areas that are used to govern like the entire county as opposed to limiting certain parts of the county to fall underneath these areas. Because I feel like maybe there's a map that has multiple layers that layer down and you can see where different areas fall under multiple of these things. And I think it would be unfair to limit parts of the county to parts of these policy areas.
Are you almost as if certain of these operate more as an overlay or as opposed to?
From what I'm understanding, like you want to do a map that puts all these policy areas on this county map and you section the county off by these policy areas. Is that what you're saying? Like, so of the 9, like different county or different cities will fall under these 9. But I think that they would be relevant to multiple parts of the county.
So some may overlap?
Correct, like
in some areas?
several, yeah. And so I think it would be unfair to limit the constraints on those policies governing the totality of certain areas.
I guess we'll have to map it, see, and discuss it. I'm not having trouble with.
Yeah, I guess I'll email you too, but I don't know.
Are you saying that you think that suggests there's a single place
Yes.
that this applies?
Yes.
I don't think that's what she's saying.
Okay, because that's what I'm trying to understand.
Basically, every parcel of land will fall into one of these categories at some point.
Yeah.
There could be multiple all over the place.
Okay, and that's where I'm trying to understand. Like, if
Now
there would be a
come out.
map like kind of this, and it's like there's these areas, like, but if the map has multiple layers. of-
So pick any one of those. The peninsula policy area is not one contiguous policy area throughout the county. We have 5 peninsulas.
Right.
There are probably going to be 5 peninsula areas.
Okay, that's
The
what I'm
town
trying to
centers, there are
understand.
3, they're not contiguous.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can have
There's a
certain
village
cities,
on
like, I mean, like Brooklyn Park might have like 6 of those.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The layer might be
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
Columbus,
on the left,
Maryland.
there's one, on
Yes.
the right. is another.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to, okay, I
It's
apologize, I
not,
needed
yeah, it's
that
not gonna
clarity.
look like.
Right, that's the clarity I needed, okay. So
So
we're
one
not limited to, okay. Thank you.
I have a request. I've read this, haven't read all the comments, but I read it online. This is really helpful. If you could send us your slides as we are going back to this and thinking about our conversations, this really helps create clarity for the work we have yet to do.
It does.
Okay, well, now that it's a little bit raining outside, everybody wants to stay in it. Do a little bit more work.
Can't go out.
Right, can't go out right now, no. Okay, so next is the approval of the meeting minutes for August 7th. I'm sure everybody has read them all. Somebody is ready to make a motion unless there are corrections?
Motion to accept. Second. Oh, you motion second.
Okay. John and Will is seconding, so.
Why did you mention these already?
Okay, so, on that note, we have a new calendar to hand out.
All right.
And Cindy is going to go over this with you. And you can rip off the top sheet, but don't rip it off because it's double-sided. Don't rip it off.
Just exit out.
Then you may not know that our next meeting is September 4th.
Don't follow her suggestion.
Yeah, don't follow my suggestion. It's double-sided. Don't follow my suggestion. And Cindy? Go ahead, yep.
Okay. So based on a few factors, including the fact that the county council does not want us to introduce this plan before the budget is completed next year.
Really?
It's too much. It's too much to introduce the budget and BDP and council. It is a lot. So that gives us more time. You know, and in hearing you all wanting to have more discussion on certain topics and so forth, I think that fits in nicely. So this new schedule kind of adds about 3 months to your committed time of meeting twice a month. So let me know if that's an issue. We've already lost 2 people, and I'd like to know sooner than more if that's going to be an issue. I mean, otherwise, the alternative is to deliver a plan to the council in January and have it adopted before they receive the budget, and that's not enough time. I mean, it has to be adopted now. Yeah. So what we've done,
Unless you want to do overtime.
yeah, I'm already doing
No,
that.
she already is.
Saturday.
And I know.
Or Saturdays off.
Time and a half pay, right, Will?
So next week, as we said, we'll have this draft policy map, but it's only the beginning of drafting. It's only to get us started. The 18th, and I won't be here, but it's going to be a joint meeting between the CAC and the newly appointed Citizens Environmental Commission to discuss how the environment is included, how it's included in the general development plan, and also I think Melanie and Anthony are going to discuss the Peninsula Coalition's Peninsula Principles. So then that kind of leads into October because environment has become the foundation of this GDP. We will then go in to start old policies and strategies related to environment. And I've laid out at least 2 meetings on that. We would have an extra meeting in October because there's a 5th Wednesday that we could utilize. We would give you sort of a background on demographics and the land use plan discussion, we have the land use, starting land use at that point, at the end of October. That is if we finish environment, setting like at least the draft of the environment. And then from there, after we have something that we're comfortable with land use, we would go into the other elements of the plan. And that would take us, really to the first, we would only have one meeting in January because of the holiday. But after January, we would sort of finalize the goals, policies, strategies, et cetera, on the elements of the plan. Let me back up. When land use, when we have what I'm going to call a pre-preliminary land use plan, it will be sent out to the various people for testing, like schools and roads. And then at the end of January, we would have that information back to make additional decisions. Then in February, so we would come back to you and miss, unless we need it, that first February meeting, but the second February meeting discussing, what those impacts are to the land use plan that we presented out just for testing purposes. And then March, we're proposing, and again, this is just a proposal, that we would then take a preliminary land use plan out to these 9 regions. You would only be responsible for.
Unless you want to come to all of them.
That way, as a really thorough outreach of our land use plan.
Don't make March 26th Suburban Park. Okay. Because that's my birthday and I'd rather not spend it there.
You can have a big party.
I know, really. She did her birthday.
In Neil, I said mine in or Annapolis. So, and then in April, we would hold the meetings. We would want to have some time to summarize the feedback, provide the feedback to you on the land use plan. In the meantime, the final draft would be put together. Now keep in mind, at that point, you've seen most of it and commented on most of it because that's the meat of it is the goals, policies, strategies. We would put all that together in an implementation plan, present a final draft, put the final draft online for public comment for 30 days. It also goes to Maryland Department of the Environment and other agencies. July, come back to you with the comments. We adjust that based on the comments before going to the planning board at the end of July.
Okay, one day at a time here. That's what we say. Gary.
In December, what is the date for our holiday party?
I guess we can do.
We can do that. It has to be an open meeting. That's right.
We'll get a meeting on the 18th.
There you go. There you go.
Here.
Have it in Countyville.
So, okay, you all have some homework. Please look at the policies, look at the summary, look at the definitions. There's 3 things. And remember, you have the last page, goals, policies, objectives, strategies.
If you have any comments on the policies, you can get those to us within within the next few days or so. That way we're gonna start drafting these areas.
Can you send that out tomorrow?
The PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yeah.
Please, really, we're getting into it now. So make sure you read and know what you're talking about, represent your area well, and come prepared. And we shall see you on September 4th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh.
One of the statements in in our vision or whatever it was about using technology to make citizens interact. Is there any plans to use the technology, maybe the collaboration system? So I know some people say, I'm gonna send Cindy an email. Is there anything like maybe we ought to do a blog sometime so we all see comments and comment on?
Well, once you have all your email set up, it'll be easier to share the documents to Google. But, you know, that's.
And we have one person left, and we're not gonna post it until we have everybody, and I will set it up for them.
I guess I was looking,
So we can do a Google Drive or Google Docs.
I'm looking at something more of maybe of a blog type functionality.
I'm not sure that the staff has the time to do that.
We don't have time to do it all. We use Slack.
Maybe we want to check that out for a bit.
Or are we limited because of the public access?
I'm sorry,
If they use Slack,
what, I'm not familiar with.
Slack is a networking tool that's free that you sign up for and you can post stuff to and you can comment on. It's really easy to use. The only question is whether it fits within parameters of what we're allowed to do because you have to be invited, you have to ask to be added to a list.
Well, that's the same as Google.
But the Google Drive, you have to be asked to do that. I think more people know Google Drive and Google Docs than probably Slack. Slack, like Slack stuff. Okay, sorry. I can only manage so many emails right now. I think I have 4 people I'm doing emails for. So thank you all, appreciate it. Safe travels home. Have a good Labor Day weekend.
Looks like I'm gonna have to spend a couple hours doing my binder.
You can put your little straight in.
Well, you know, it's not for him. I actually went through the 4 pages of comments.
I don't do much on
Five.
It's pretty good.
It was